I think the critics of Cardano are right to be mad about Cardano. In fact, I don't think they're being salty enough. Ready? Let's go. You all already know, I just want to sit down at the Cardano Cyberpunk pub and drink shot after shot after shot of Ethereum maximalist tears. But honestly, when I think about it, they should be even angrier. They should be even saltier than they currently are, given how much they've probably already put into the Ethereum ecosystem. As predicted, the gates to the salt mine have opened up a little bit more. We're seeing an increased number of tweets like this one. Cardano is the biggest scam project out there, hasn't shipped or delivered anything, constantly tries to hijack narratives, whatever that means, and fools people like in Africa. Obviously, this Twitter user knows more about cryptocurrencies than the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, who is actually a cryptographer. We're also seeing the last resort of the weaponless, the ad hominem attacks like this one. This fellow says, I don't respect a single person who likes Cardano. Having run out of complaints about Cardano, he is actually resorting to, I just don't like you guys. If you think about it though, even Bitcoin maximalists or Bitcoin enthusiasts, whatever these two are, probably aren't being salty enough. The pre-ante status quo prior to Cardano was pretty good. Sure, you had Ethereum, which added programmability on top of whatever benefits you could point out in Bitcoin, but Ethereum was quickly broken by the scourge of high fees. So it was still a pretty comfortable place for Bitcoin to be. It was like Bitcoin had the crazy inability to scale, but so did Ethereum. We see the entrance of Cardano, and all of a sudden, Bitcoin enthusiasts have to worry about a new player in the top 5 that's decentralized, has all of the programmability and other benefits of Ethereum over Bitcoin, but isn't broken on layer 1 by absurdly high fees. Even worse, this new player seems hell-bent on doing all those things for the less prosperous of the world that Bitcoin actually promised to do before it became a plaything for the ultra-rich. After all, Bitcoin notables like Jack Dorsey were making a PR masterpiece out of being seen as leading the charge for crypto in Africa. That is, until Cardano actually executed on the biggest deployment in the history of crypto in Ethiopia. But as much as we're a thorn in the side of Bitcoin maximalists, the rise of Cardano couldn't possibly come at a worse time for Ethereum maximalists. Ethereum has become seemingly irretrievably addicted to DeFi, with this DApp Radar report telling us that in 2020, 87% of Ethereum's transaction volumes came from just 10 DeFi dApps. This is really bad news in a world where powerful senators are writing letters to the chairman of the SEC and using phrases like DeFi fraudsters stole $80 million, more than double the haul from last year, and saying things like DeFi platforms in particular, which offer investors higher interest rates and whose developers are often anonymous, make it easy to carry out rug pulls, a scam in which unscrupulous operators raise money for a project only to abscond with the funds. Then we see the SEC chairman agreeing in a return letter that basically says, hey, Americans are buying, selling, and lending crypto on centralized and DeFi platforms. I believe these platforms implicate the securities laws, possibly the commodities laws and banking laws, and this raises a number of issues related to protecting investors and consumers. He also says, in his view, the legislative priority should center on things like crypto trading, lending, and DeFi. We can also assume that Treasury agrees, since we know all the language for the infrastructure bills, crypto tax reporting requirements was negotiated with Treasury. And as we've discussed, the first draft of that language included a specific reference to DEXs. So we've got the SEC, Treasury, and some powerful senators all signaling in the strongest possible terms that they very much want to regulate DeFi. Meanwhile, something like 87% of all Ethereum transaction volume last year was in DeFi. And we've got many projects with more than $5 billion worth of assets locked up in them on Ethereum. No matter how hard they strive to achieve the cognitive dissonance of believing that all of this regulatory mayhem won't have any effect on Ethereum, Ethereum maximalists in the back of their minds have got to be asking themselves, okay, what actually happens if Treasury comes out and says, yes, they are actually going to impose tax reporting requirements on DeFi projects? So we can approach this a couple different ways. Of course, a lot of Ethereum maximalists will approach it from the DeFi will just be outlaw perspective. That's to say that DeFi will just keep doing its thing. It won't comply with Treasury's requirements, and people will keep using it, and DeFi is untouchable, basically. But let's think about what compliance actually looks like before we think about that outlaw scenario. If tax reporting is required of things like DEXs and other DeFi platforms, that means they have to issue 1099s to their users, just like a regular centralized exchange would of anything, equities or anything else. If they have to issue 1099s, that means they have to KYC their users. And while this sounds atrocious and unimaginable to the more libertarian among crypto users, it has some pretty bad practical ramifications even beyond the ideological. If you have to KYC your users, then immediately other parts of Treasury besides the IRS will start imposing duties on you, like FinCEN. FinCEN is in charge of all the anti-money laundering stuff. It's just another part of Treasury. And as soon as we have KYC of these DeFi users, FinCEN is going to come along and say, oh, you have KYC data on your users now. That means you need to do anti-money laundering stuff. The problem with that is that it goes beyond just writing software. If you have to do AML stuff, that means whenever there's anything suspicious going on that looks like it could be money laundering, you have to write a SAR and submit it to FinCEN. That's a suspicious activity report. And while you could imagine ways that crypto might invent to automate this, currently in even the biggest financial institutions in the world, while there is some automation, there are like algorithms that flag suspicious behavior. The biggest financial institutions in the world, they still have humans. There are humans whose job is called AML analyst who write these suspicious activity reports. Humans actually write up a report and submit it to FinCEN. Those humans generally have to have managers, and there has to be hiring of them. That means there's an HR department. That means there's payroll. That means there's accounting. All these things have to happen to make this required AML stuff happen. The second you've got financial transactions going on with users who are KYC'd. Can you imagine any current DeFi platform being able to accomplish this? Is Uniswap going to have an office somewhere full of AML analysts? Is Uniswap going to have a payroll department, an HR department? How can that possibly work inside the DeFi paradigm? This isn't like a new requirement that could possibly be imposed on DEXs and other DeFi platforms. It's always been the case that federal law in the US required you to do AML stuff generally if you've got billions of dollars of assets flowing through your financial platform. Current DeFi platforms are simply incompatible with the regulatory framework that might be about to be imposed upon them. I mean, that's just the way it is. There's no way around it, really. And this is a big problem for a blockchain that is 87% reliant on DeFi. Normally, this wouldn't be so bad for the biggest player in a specific sector, because normally the burden of newly imposed regulations is sort of felt by all the players in that given sector equally. Everybody has to suffer from the newly imposed regulations. But with Ethereum, it's different. Their biggest competitor right now is really Cardano. The biggest threat to their market cap, let's say, is Cardano, just in terms of where they each are in terms of market cap. And Cardano is not 87% reliant on DeFi. In fact, given all the furious workaround innovation that's been required to deal with concurrency issues, you could say that Cardano's EUTXO system wasn't even really designed for DeFi. What was Cardano designed for? Exactly what they've been doing. They're out in Ethiopia trying to create digital blockchain-based tools to revolutionize whole societies to create more prosperity. That is something that isn't at all reliant on DeFi. This is a completely different area of blockchain innovation. And if all of DeFi got wiped off the map by regulators, Cardano would still know exactly what to do. If that were to happen tomorrow for Ethereum, I don't know what direction Ethereum would go in. True, this is a 2020 number, 87%. And things have happened since then. Certainly, we've seen a rise in NFTs and things like play to earn games. That's been a big deal in Ethereum. So, this 87% number might be lower this year, but we can still say the significant portion of Ethereum activity has been in DeFi. Sure, you could argue that their NFT scene would be left alone, but then they're just kind of on equal footing with Cardano. True, the Cardano CNFT scene is a lot newer than Ethereum, but it also has certain technical advantages over the Ethereum NFT scene. I mean, we don't even need smart contracts for our NFTs. The only reason that a majority of the Ethereum community isn't in straight rage mode over where things seem to be headed is that cognitive dissonance is allowing them to disacknowledge the corner they've painted themselves into. Fortunately, while this could turn out to be a huge detriment to Ethereum, all of this would accrue to the benefit of Cardano since we're just barely beginning the smart contract era in our blockchain. And we can go in a lot of different directions. We've never built out this gigantic transaction volume reliance on DeFi, which might be about to meet its regulatory doom. I'm glad I'm on this side of the fence. Talk to you tomorrow.